Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Zaniqua, and in today's video I'm going to be telling you 5 things I wish I knew before self-publishing my first children's book while I do my hair, because I go to the beach tomorrow and baby I could not go with my hair looking like this. This will be a part of my self-publishing journey, which is all grouped in one playlist that you can find here. And if you find this video interesting, make sure to give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I have my notes down here on my iPad, so if I'm looking down, that is why, or I'm looking at myself in the mirror to do my hair. Let me go ahead and say this. So you do not need to know how to illustrate like a professional, and I put quotes because that's what I originally thought. Illustrations in the children's books can vary. It just depends on what you have in mind for your children's book. I highly recommend going to a local library, or if you have kids at home, pulling books off the shelves and flipping through and seeing the different spreads, seeing the different layouts, seeing the different illustrations. You could literally draw a book full of stick figures and it could still do well. It literally just all depends on your personal preference. So do not try to go for perfection, because literally what you're doing could be perfect for you and your style. If you don't know how to illustrate at all and you're going for a particular look, I highly recommend just doing a quick YouTube video search. And again, this is if you just want to save money. That's what I did. I didn't want to pay for an illustrator, so I just literally searched how to illustrate my very first children's book. Then I simplified that a little bit more and searched how to draw cartoon styles, and then just kept simplifying it until I found somebody who had a style that I liked, and I played around with that style, turned it into my own. Now let's hop into it. The first thing you need to know, like I said, is your audience. It's so easy to get caught up in making the art look cool, but you have to remember that you're illustrating for kids. I have to remind myself that it doesn't have to have too many details, and I need to stop striving for perfection, because at the end of the day, I'm illustrating this for kids, and while yes, kids love to look at pictures, it doesn't have to be something complex. But that's why I said before I even got into the tutorial is that you really need to, kind of just trust the process, is what I was trying to say in that beginning portion of this video. But also, you don't need to strive for perfection, and I just need to take my own advice, y'all. I'm still struggling with it, and I've been working. It's literally been almost a year, or right at a year, that I started this process. And you just gotta kind of take it day by day. It's okay if you make it look cool, but it really doesn't need to be a lot of small, intricate details. At the end of the day, what do kids like? I mean, what would grab their attention? And that's the question you need to be asking yourself. What do they like, and what would grab their attention? Like I mentioned in my first video, which will be in the description or in the playlist if you want to go watch it, where I said 10 things I wish I knew before starting my self-publishing journey, is that 3 of my little cousins inspired this book. More often than not, I'm stopping and showing them progress along the way with illustrations. The illustrations are supposed to represent them, so I make sure that they can see themselves in their character. And then I also ask them about each other's characters, because if they can't recognize the characters and, they can't say, oh, that's me in that book, then I didn't even get my point across, because that's the main point of the book. But I'll also let them tell me about the spreads or the pages that I make. And I mean, they're only 3, 6, and 7, so it's only so much that they can tell me. But any little input that they give me will definitely help me along the way. So if you have kids in your life, definitely get feedback for them. Kids are the most honest people, so they're going to tell you what they like and what they don't like. If they think it's too much going on, if it's taken away from the story. And if you don't have kids, you still need to have, like I said in that last video, a couple people that you can turn to ask for advice and just get feedback. To sum all of what I said in that first tip up, because I feel like I was all over the place if I'm being honest, is that you just need to focus even more on making sure your illustrations are understandable and clear for the target audience that you are trying to reach. Tip number 2, don't skip the sketching phase. I promise you, you're going to want to sketch it out, because you're going to continue to make revisions. You're going to continue to change things, especially when you're taking a step away, which you definitely should be. I got burnt out when I was first started illustrating my children's book, so I definitely did take a step away. And those first illustrations that I did, which I will show a before and after, those first illustrations that I did literally changed, like drastically changed, because I improved my drawing skills, but also my vision for the children's book and the illustrations that I was trying to convey to match the story also changed over time. And so I was constantly sketching. My sketches changed. Even if I start off one single page or illustration, I start off with one sketch and I start drawing, I may go in and end up sketching something completely different or changing half of the original sketch. I don't know about y'all, but I'm a very visual person. I need to see everything. But this is what I first started off with. This is just like a spread of what each page looked like, just little thumbnails. And you can see I cut little papers off. I changed even these little thumbnails here for what I envisioned for my book. This overview basically helped me figure out which pages were going to be full page designs and which ones weren't. But I highly don't recommend skipping the sketching phase, which is tip number 2, but probably one of the biggest tips that I can give, is don't skip the sketching page. Because one, you're gonna want to see the transitions that you made, but also your ideas are likely to change between when you start and when you end, especially depending on how long it take you to complete your book and the deadlines that you have set for yourself. Also glad that I can see the differences and the changes and the improvement that I've made, even between my sketching and the final drafts or rough drafts, to what I now consider to be or hope to be the final drafts, which may change between now and when I plan to release this book. I know it's tempting to dive right into the final illustrations, especially when you're excited to get the product finished, but trust me, your book and your future self will thank you when you take the time to actually sit and plan it out. Sketching is where you figure out the pacing, the layout, how each page flows. Like I said, that's what I use that big overview for, because I'm very visual. It's important not to skip the sketching phase, just simply to see how far you've come. Moving into tip number 3 is that consistency is key. And I know that's that generic thing that everybody say about everything, but I promise you it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of drawing. But remember, your characters need to look the same from page to page. Something I'm struggling with, if I'm being honest. I started drawing my characters multiple times, but characters and just, you know, drawing them right proportions, all of that, it just wasn't looking the same from page to page. If it changes too much between illustrations, it might confuse your target audience. I don't even know where I was at. My camera died while I was doing my hair because it overheated for some reason. So I'm gonna try to get through the remainder of these tips quick. I think what I was saying was the eyes, the hair, sometimes the clothing, but definitely the eyes, the hair, the skin tone. If it changes too much between illustrations, kids may get confused. I had a couple of oops moments where the character height wasn't consistent. So that's why I paused on drawing the characters, because I just need to do a little bit more sketching of those characters. Not that I hadn't done sketching, but I just need a little bit more practice with that. Let's move on into tip number 4, because I don't even remember all that I said in tip number 3. So I don't want to just continue to ramble on, because as we all know, I tend to do that. Moving on into tip number 4 is don't be afraid to collaborate, even if you are the solo creator. Whether it's with a writer, illustrator, or either other illustrators, getting feedback is essential. So like I mentioned earlier on, if you have kids that can give you feedback in the best way that they know how, or family or friends, or just somebody that you trust with, you know, where you're at with your children's book and the progress, and you truly trust them, collaborating with them, even if you are the solo creator, is not a bad thing, because all feedback is good. Especially constructive criticism. It's one thing to be negative and to judge, and it's another to be given constructive criticism. This is something that I've done from the very beginning. It's okay to take that to somebody and maybe ask them for a little bit of help, you know, contribute. At the end of the day, it's still your piece of work, your piece of artwork. You know, ask for feedback, ask them what they would change and what they wouldn't change. And just like some of my illustrations in the book has changed, my book cover has also changed a lot. And one of the first copies of my book cover that I did, that I originally planned to go with, I ended up sending it to a friend and didn't necessarily tell her what it was about, but I'm sure she could like figure it out from context clues on what was on that page. I did ask her feedback on, what do you think about this? What do you think about the font? What do you think about the handwritten parts? And she gave me her feedback, and at first I wasn't feeling it. But at the end of the day, I asked for the feedback. You know, later down the line, I decided, oh, I don't even like that illustration myself, because I had took like a month away from it, came back and looked at it with fresh eyes, and decided, oh, hey, she was right. This font is too busy. It's too many different fonts. I need to tone it down a little bit. The color is off, and I ended up illustrating or drawing something completely different, and I ended up going with a whole different cover, which still to this day may change once I get all of my illustrations done for the book, because your illustrations in the book need to reflect the front cover and the back cover as well. So like I said, feedback is essential. There's no need to be afraid to collaborate, even if you are the solo creator. So please remember that. Moving on into the final and last tip, I think, because y'all know I may just add something that I think about, but moving on into tip number 5 is to be patient with yourself. Creating your first children's book is a huge accomplishment within itself, but it's also a learning experience, okay? It's easy to get discouraged when things don't turn out exactly as you imagined. But remember, growth takes time. Like I say, slow growth is still growth, okay? And you have to take it one day at a time, especially if you're like me, and I'm gonna keep saying that, illustrating and writing it yourself, and you have no experience with illustrating specifically or writing. I didn't have experience in neither one of those, but I decided last year when I wrote all my goals out for the year that, oh, I want to illustrate my first book. babe, I had no experience. So I thought I needed to get on Fiverr and Upwork and pay somebody to write it, pay somebody to illustrate it for me. No, I took can't out my vocabulary, prayed about it, and was able to do a little bit of research, practice, and I was able to make something shake. And if I'm being honest, I'm gonna toot my own horn, toot toot, because them illustrations look like a professional did it. Now that I've taken time, in the beginning it didn't look like that, and again, it don't have to look like that. It's literally what you want for your book. But it's okay to make mistakes. And once I gave myself permission to make mistakes, it became more fun and rewarding. It's just so interesting even now to look back at pictures or illustrations that I did at the very beginning of the process, or even a month ago or even a day ago, and see how it's changed, because some has drastically changed and some has barely changed. And basically that's the 5 tips that I have for you, the things I wish I knew before illustrating my very first children's book, or 5 things you should know before illustrating your first children's book. Whether it be 5 things I wish I knew or 5 things you should know before illustrating your first children's book, that was my 5 tips. And all 5 tips, maybe even 6, I gave it a little spiel at the beginning, were very important, and I hope they helped you if you're on the same journey as me as self-publishing and illustrating your very first children's book. If you're an aspiring illustrator or working on your own book, drop a comment below and let me know what you wish you'd known, or things that you learned while doing or while going through your process of self-publishing, or learning how to illustrate or illustrating. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I know I just entered the video, and maybe this should be tip number 7, but this is also something that I wish I knew that I didn't learn until halfway through my process, that I think is really important. I highly recommend you making some type of collage with images you. I wish I would have known that little tip in the beginning, because it would have saved me a lot of time thinking, resketching, redrawing, erasing, all of that stuff. So I highly recommend making a collage and utilizing that. And if you need to do it for every page, every spread, whatever, I definitely recommend doing it. You don't have to print it off. I just chose to print it off. I found that easier when I did the second one, but you can keep it digital. And I literally just screenshot images from Pinterest, and I went and I screenshot it, put it all in the collage, sized it down, and then I just go in and add little notes and things that, jumped out at me when I looked at it. That's my last and final tip. Now, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Comment what you would like to see in the future, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.